The Liberals don't want Canadians to own houses, and now it is more clear than ever based on Carney's recent announcements with their housing program, how they're going to control the building and they're going to control all of it because they don't want you guys to actually own homes. And it's becoming more evident that they have no intention of slowing immigration, which is also making the housing crisis worse. We all know that. The numbers show that. But the number one Liberal consultant and the housing analyst who has worked with the Liberal government for a decade, basically, is in today's video in multiple interviews. You guys would have seen him, and he ignores the immigration question on purpose. So you can see there's no intention from any consultants or anybody for this to change. You're going to have to find solutions. Maybe there are some out there. And then Pierre made an update on how he plans on dealing with Trump and America. So let's get into it.
We're now into day 4 of this election campaign, and one of the earliest issues to come out of the gates is the issue of housing. Perhaps not surprising, as this country is in a housing crisis, with the Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation saying back in January that nearly 1 in 2 Canadians are concerned about being able to afford their homes. Well, with his thoughts on what the parties are promising to address the crisis, we're now joined by Mike Moffat, an economist and founding director of Place Centre at the Smart Prosperity Institute. He has also advised the former Trudeau government on housing policy in the past. Mike, good to see you again. Thank you.
Do you guys hear that? I'm going to try and split it so you can see his face. There you go. So that's Mike Moffat. You've probably seen him on a bunch of different interviews, and they just said he directly has advised the Trudeau government. Okay? So there you go. There's our boy.
Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
So listen, let's begin with the Liberal plan under Mark Carney. And, you know, early in this campaign, this is basically what they are calling for. They're calling for the removal of the GST for first-time home buyers for homes under $1 million, unlocking private capital for new home construction, expanding the use of prefab modular homes, double nonprofit community housing, and expand how the Canada housing infrastructure is used. You know, when you hear those key points, Mike, I'm wondering how you would assess
community housing,
what the Liberals are proposing in this election.
Well, I think other than the GST piece, that those are more kind of targets than policies. So it's, you know, it's nice to have a vision, but it's not clear entirely how they'll get there. On the GST piece, I think that will help because the GST only applies to new homes. It is a cost of construction. So you lower that, you make construction cheaper. I wish they had extended that to all buyers of primary residences, because there's a lot of, let's say, seniors who would like to downsize from their current home who won't get that rebate. And downsizing seniors would really help unlock some of those family-sized homes for the next generation. So
I'm not sure I understand the point that he's making there, because he just said the GST rebate is only going to apply for new build homes. So if the seniors are planning on selling their personal residence, which they live in, they wouldn't be paying any GST on that, and nobody else would be paying any GST on that. And then they would have their tax exempt money from their personal residence and be able to buy the downsized home. Anybody buying their home wouldn't pay GST. So I'm not sure what he's talking about there.
I like what they're doing on GST, but I think they could have been a little bit more bold with this one.
A little bit more bold, because, for example, the target of using prefab and modular homes, not enough to know that it will make a dent?
Well, I mean, it's a goal, it's a vision, but it's not clear how they'll get there. So, so yes, it's great to want to do those things, but what are the actual policy instruments? What are the changes you're going to make to make that happen?
Yeah, what are the, it's going to be great for them to make the change is just a bunch of government-built prefab homes. They own them too, and, you know, it's just totally government supplied program.
Okay. So listen, let's switch over now to what we're hearing from Conservatives so far when it comes to housing, and what they are calling for includes the removal of the GST on home sales under $1.3 million, a reduction in immigration numbers.
Reduction in immigration numbers. This is the first time, you guys know that I'm critical of Pierre all the time, because it took him forever to address immigration as being an impact on the housing market. And, you know, he tries to be this like, you know, talking realities. I'm Pierre. So I was always busting his chops because he never brought it up. He was this huge immigration guy. So for them to add that to the policy being, you know what, we'll have to reduce immigration, I was happy to see that, because Previously, he wasn't saying anything about it either. But I know this guy won't say anything about it.
The elimination of the Housing Accelerator Fund and the Housing Infrastructure Fund. Also, a requirement of municipalities to increase housing starts by 15% annually or risk losing federal infrastructure dollars. What do you make of what we're hearing from the Tories so far?
Yeah, I think they've been a little bit more bold than the Liberals. So, having it at one point, the GST rebate at 1.3 million instead of 1 million, it's really going to help in the GTA and Greater Vancouver area, since a lot of homes fall in that price point. Unlike the Liberals, they've made it available to everyone. Surprisingly,
and keep in mind when they're talking about this rebate, that's going to really help in the GTA and all these areas. Well, those are the areas that get the most amount of immigration. And we're going to talk about that in one of the clips that I'm going to show later. Like the Golden Horseshoe and the GTA, that gets a lot of Canada's immigration percentage-wise. So for them to be like, oh, well, it's going to help those areas. Well, who's it helping?
they're making it available to investors as well, or people who are buying secondary properties like cottages. So, that might be a little bit controversial. On some of the other pieces, the housing accelerator, I think, is in desperate need of reform, but I think it's a good idea. So I'd like to see them keep it. On some of the municipal targets, I think we'll just find on that, and the current government has had this issue too, where municipalities will say, like, look, you're not putting enough money on the table. We'll just forego it rather than deal with all the restrictions you're putting on us. So I think they'll find that that's not providing enough of an incentive for municipalities to act.
Okay, not enough of an incentive. Let's go back to the Housing Accelerator Fund, because you,
and there you go, has nothing to do with immigration. He won't. And this is one of the most senior economist data guys around Canadian housing. He won't even touch on immigration. And then you see these staggering numbers. Look at this graph that we have here. The number of net new businesses versus foreign immigration. This is Canada 2024. So number of net new businesses, minus 407. And I mentioned that in another video. We're losing small businesses. And then you have 724,586, immigration. That's people who've immigrated to Canada. Obviously, that's not going to include the temporary foreign workers and all of that in those numbers. So seeing these staggering numbers, we're losing businesses. We are getting insane levels of immigration, and we are still pretending that has no impact on the job market. That has no, if you're watching this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. But that has no impact on the job market and no impact on housing. It clearly does. And even me, guys, I've mentioned it before, I'm a real estate investor, and I've seen, as they've lowered immigration recently, especially with some of the student stuff, that which is actually not even happening through the government. That's happening because international students are applying for Canada less because they caught on to the scam. So we've seen rents are going down. It's just happening. It is what it is. So when you see these staggering numbers, and then none of these people will talk about it. Finally, the Conservatives did. But here's a perfect example of the policy being broken from the ground up. Okay. So here's this video talking about, well, if you can't afford a house in your area, just move to another one, move out of the area that you grew up in where you used to be able to buy a house, and let the immigrants buy them, and then you move somewhere else. It's crazy.
Alberta, Canada.
In March, Alberta put out another call, enticing people to move to the province for better economic prospects.
We have nearly 100,000 rewarding jobs ready and available in a variety of high-demand sectors, including skilled trades, healthcare, accounting, engineering, technology.
The first round of ads appealed to the Etheridge family, which moved from Keswick, Ontario to Edmonton last year in search of a better life and a much bigger backyard.
In Ontario, we rented a 4-bedroom house. We didn't have a yard, and we were paying $2,600 plus utilities, whereas living in Alberta, we pay less than $1,800 for a 5-bedroom house.
Like many young families, they felt priced out in Ontario.
I couldn't have asked for a better change, to be honest. It has done a whole 360 for our family, completely.
Usually people mean a 180, not a 360. 360 means you ended up in the same spot you started in. But I get what she's saying. She's nervous and on the news. We're not going to take anything out on this lovely lady here. But the point is, these people had to leave Ontario just to be able to afford a rent that makes sense. And guess which holds the rent up? when you stuff 10 people into a single place and you're charging each one of them $500, and then that you can get $5,000 rent on a single house because you put 10 bedrooms into these. Like, the numbers that these people were doing were insane. And so keep in mind, here's what we've got encouraged right here. Hey, if you can't afford Ontario, why don't you just move out to Alberta where it's cheaper? So can't afford Ontario, let's move to Alberta and make that more expensive because we've increased the demand, which again, as we all know, you can't outbuild the demand that the Liberal government is putting on Canada with these levels of immigration. We can't do it. It's physically impossible. Even with wartime housing acts and all of these things, that number has to go down. We have to stop the demand side because we cannot outproduce that. So anyways, watch what they say as the reason why Canadians are moving and how this is a solution, not what should be the solution.
Really?
Interprovincial migration volumes plunged in 2020, the first year of the pandemic, but they exploded last year. Alberta saw the biggest spike in newcomers from BC and Ontario, while the Maritime provinces welcomed a steady stream of migrants, mostly from Ontario. Economists say it boils down to housing options, affordability, and job prospects.
And that is driving a lot of young people to move farther away from where they started, to set up shop, to start a career, and to have a family.
Housing analysts say this exodus from the country's most expensive markets may be helpful as Canada prepares to welcome a record number of newcomers from abroad.
Most new Canadians relocate in the Golden Horseshoe in Southern Ontario. So if anything, the out movement of people to other regions of the country is providing something of a relief valve. It's helping keep a lid on uncomfortably high home price appreciation.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Canadians living in Ontario and other expensive provinces? If you could just be so kind as to clear out of your hometowns so that the immigrants can move in, that's going to be very helpful for Canada's economy. It's going to be very helpful for the housing market if you just leave your local community and just clear out the space. Like, this is the way that the Liberals are looking at this. They're going, well, you know, if you leave, you go to these cheaper places, you can afford to live, and then we got more room for the immigrants that we're pumping in. And they do it because Canada's economy is not doing well. They have to bring in these immigrants. And before you get mad at me, I'm not saying this as like, oh, the immigrants are all to blame. The government is to blame for bringing in the immigrants. It's keeping wages low. It is obviously impacting house prices. There's all sorts of things that are inflationary when you start to increase the population by this level. So it's so clear now. In this next video, we have a video of Pierre talking about how he's going to be dealing with the Americans and Trump. Like I said, Table Salt, the account on Twitter, clipped it. I think he made the actual announcement on CPAC, but he does say something really funny in here that needs to be acknowledged.
As I said, Canadians have the right to know what red lines I will draw in order to protect our country in these inevitable negotiations that any future Prime Minister will have to have and have quickly. So let me be clear. First, I will protect our control over our border, our security, our resources, our farmers, including our supply-managed farmers, our fresh water.
That's the part that made me laugh, including our supply-managed farmers. The dairy cartel never stops. And, you know, I'm not sure I love the supply management side on the, the domestic producers. I'm sure you guys have seen the clips go around of the dairy farmers who have to dump milk because they're over their quotas. Milk's never been higher. So for us to be like, yeah, we're going to really protect some of these prices. I just found it funny that he like snuck it in there.
Our automotive workers. Also, we will protect our sovereignty, our laws, our currency, our dollar, our land, our waters, our sky, our culture, our official languages, and our resources and Indigenous rights will not be under the control of any other country. This is non-negotiable. We will protect Canada's sovereignty in any negotiations.
See, and already he's repositioned it better. It's not, we're cutting, military ties and we're going to take on America. He's saying we're going to protect ourselves and make Canada better and stronger. And even though I am like a big we should be working with the US guy, I have no problem with us making the focus of a strong Canada. In fact, I don't have a problem with it. I encourage it. We should be making Canada as strong as possible, but not battling with the US. That's not what we should be doing. Because that's not going to help us get stronger and better. Because in the meantime, we need to rely on the partnership with them while we grow and while we fix things.
Second, for years, the Americans have demanded we do more in defense. But the truth is, Canadians have been demanding exactly the same thing. And so I will commit that any extra revenue generated from expanded trade with the United States will go right into our armed forces. We will hit our 2%. We will take back control of our Arctic waters from the Chinese and the Russians. We will rebuild our military and will become a truly sovereign nation with a strong armed forces that can protect us.
I'm said it before and I'm going to say it again. I'm critical of Pierre all the time because sometimes I feel like he doesn't say things that I would like to have been said that would actually lead to major changes. That being said, a lot of his announcements have been good. They've been strong. I love the idea of a strong, sovereign Canada, but an actual Canada. We need to make sure that we're all protecting the same idea, not just the economic entity of Canada. And so I'm going to hold Pierre to, listen, he's probably, if all things go the way they should, going to win. When he does, he's making a lot of great announcements here that we get to hold him accountable for. And if he keeps this up, this could be great for Canada if he is able to follow through on all these things. So I like this announcement. I like the change of tone that we're not going to be combating America. We're going to make ourselves strong because you don't wish for weaker enemies. You wish for more strength to take on your problems. So that was great to see. Anyways, if you made it this far in the video, guys, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe and have a great rest of your day.